Okay, so what you see here basically, if you could see. So I have this environment. Let me just visualize. So I have this folder, I call it for the slab. I have my Elasticsearch over there, and I have a JRuby. I need to put my Linux. I have Kibana and Logstash and metric week. Okay, so I have every one of this basically down. That's why I would have said to you guys, be a Linux user, you have much more flexibility in compared to Windows users. But yeah, so it makes it much easier for you to work with this type of things. But anyway, so what you need to do is technically to have those folders in your main folder. So Elasticsearch, you don't need Ruby, probably, it's just for mine, but you need Elasticsearch, Kibana, and Logstash, and metric peak for what the second thing, you know. But and as you add like a file bit, you need to basically add that folder sitting over there. Now, the first thing is that what we want to do is let me tell you what's the idea. So the idea is that we want to run the logistic regression model, and we want to run a simple file. So I have this where is it, loggen.py, which basically, as soon as you run this .py file, it basically generates a log file over the same log file. It appends to that log file. The log file already exists, and it populates a random folder and just populates some random logs. So it doesn't do anything. It just populates random log. Okay, and the second file, which is the logistic regression file, it basically does the same thing. It just I created a random logistic regression, train it, and I want to log timestamp AUC if one is for a false positive rate and stuff like that. Right. So whatever you want to log, I'm just generating random log, and I will add these logs to two text files. Okay, here, one of them is this one. Let me see actually, log logistic regression. So one of them is this one. So every time I run this code, basically it will generate a log like that. What was the timestamp? AUC if one is for false positive, right? So that's for logistic regression, and for the other one, I think it's log file. Yeah, yes. It basically generates a timestamp and some error and some log message. And there's no log message. I just say log message. So that's all I'm doing. But what I will do is that I will, and again, structurally doesn't mean that you need to do that. But I will put this log files, the text files, into my main main folder. Okay, not inside the Kibana or Logstash, it's just in my main folder. So that imagine now you have a model, and your model is running somewhere. All you need to do is that to write the logs of the model in this folder. Okay, so that's all you need to do. Then we want to have a logs Elasticsearch. First thing is to have it installed and be sure it's running. One thing to keep in mind is that the Elasticsearch has a folder called config. Okay, so in that folder, there is a file elasticsearch.yaml. So that is where you need to define some security measures. So most of it is empty. So these are you define depending on the company you work and the need that you have. If you're working with clusters, if you have different nodes that it will run on and stuff like that, I don't do any of those. I don't need to pass any paths to the data. If you need to define some memory for the Elasticsearch, because again, Elasticsearch is a distributed server, right? And you need to have enough memory, powers, and stuff like that. So, but for our project, I don't need to define any of this. I just local. So I leave those all comments down. Okay. I don't need any network for it. It's just local network. So I will basically skip all of this onto this part. From my perspective, my computer, I needed to disable these securities in order to don't have any problem with HTTPs and try to bring it up. So that might be for some of you also is the case. Okay, so I disable the securities, so my browser doesn't have issues with the IPs of the that I want to project the Elasticsearch on it. Okay, then after that, I activate the security SSL. I just for security and HTTP, and I say that the certificate exists into this path. Okay, and I have a folder called cert HTTP. It comes for it's when you download Elasticsearch install, you have a certificate comes with it. Okay, and then you need to install, like you need to add this information. Like for example, you all should have some folder like this, certs. And in this cert folder, you should have something like that. Do you have? Yeah, so this is what basically you have. You have it. So I basically say to them, pass the address to it. Maybe also by default, you have those information written in your Elasticsearch. You don't need to do it. Just you need to be sure it's commented, it's not commented. Okay. And then I give a name to the master nodes of this cluster. And then I define a host IP. I would say that I want it to run on 000. Okay, that's basically the configuration that I have for this. There again, this is the simplest strategy. It's not technically like that. You know, if you're working in a company, you have a different team that they're going to set up this for you, probably. If you have some IT team or you have some backend team that they are creating this, but maybe also they ask you to do it. So just keep that in mind. So I close that. So what I need to do, I want to step one, run Logstash. And in order to run Logstash, because again, let me go to here to Logstash, close this, and everything else is default. You don't touch it. So now, in order to run Logstash, I basically do, Elasticsearch, Elasticsearch, bin Elasticsearch. So Elasticsearch is a folder bin. In that bin is basically, you know, the setup one that you just run it. You let that run, and hope for that you don't get any errors. So the good thing about Elasticsearch is that it writes everything to a log file. So it allows you basically to. So right now it's running. Now look at here. It says, let me bring the colorful one so you can. So if I go here, logs. I think it should be this one. Is that today? No. Yeah, this one. So maybe this one. No. Oh, here, Elasticsearch logs, maybe. Yeah, okay. There's so many logs over there. Sorry. So let's bring this down. And so you see, basically, it's important if you get error in your Elasticsearch, go find this log and try to see what's the error you are getting. So one error that I was getting a couple of days ago was that my Elasticsearch was giving me the red state rather than yellow state or green state. And when I look at the logs here, it was actually, maybe I have it here. I can show it to you. Let me see. Now it's actually refreshed. So it's now zipped. The error was telling me that I didn't have enough disk space on my machine. And Elastic, because it runs this in this like a virtual environment specific for you in order to be able to have these nodes, cluster nodes, it requires enough disk space. And I didn't know that. It actually was telling me error, give me an error that you have more than 90% disk space used. So it wasn't running the Elasticsearch. It wasn't giving me the error, but when I go to the log, I would see this error. So that's something to keep in mind. Right now, it runs, and last thing you see here, actually, I have a warning on it. Look, largest watermark, 85%, because I deleted 5% data in order to restore this to run. Right? If it's above 90%, it says red state, it doesn't run the Elasticsearch. And then here you basically run to the right and free this much. There's a part that, sorry, look at the third line. Current health, yellow. So yellow and green are okay. Yellow is almost dangerous because that means you're getting to the red, but it's okay. Green is perfect, red doesn't work. So, and then it tells you that cluster health status changed from red to yellow. What was the reason? There was some shard basically that active. So I got rid of, either the way that is that when Elasticsearch runs, I put actually some code here to run and show you. Let's see, where did I have it? So yeah, so let's run this. Huh? So if we run something like that, it basically, this is so bad, we cannot zoom in. Oh, can we? Yeah, we can. So look at the that information that we get. And basically says your cluster name, status, timed out, and stuff like that. And as you go here, it says first number of nodes. I only activate one node, but active many shards. Shards is for when you split your basically your hardened data, that create these shardings, right? And for the cluster, if you have 47 shards, you need to have 47 shards active. If for some reason one of those shards won't get activated, then you get a red state. Okay, so you might, so it's a good strategy for you to run this code. Okay, this one on top, curl x get doesn't. Let's see. It doesn't show it here, so yeah, this code here, and you can get some status around your Elasticsearch if it's running properly or not. Okay, so keep that in mind. Now, let's move this aside. So now we have Elasticsearch is running. Next thing we want to go over and talk about is Kibana. So Kibana is the same thing. You basically, when you download it, there's going to be this. So you don't necessarily need to download this also. You could install them. They also have an installer packages. I personally prefer to download them to just work with the source code rather than installing them. Okay, so that's a different version also. But has the same structure. There's a config file, and you go to this config file, kibana.yaml, and for me, everything is default. So I'm not changing anything about it. So it's by default, this should run with the Elasticsearch that we have. And there's a node options. And so the node option, when you create these cluster nodes, you can give them more memory or reduce some memory. I need it for my work to, by default, I think this is 4,000 something. I doubled it, I think. So if you're looking at yours, if you go to Kibana node options, yeah, so I doubled that to make it that way, right? So you might have some error like that because mine was saying that I don't have enough space size for the Elastic and Kibana to run together, so I needed to increase it. But that's for the node size. So now all I need to do is basically run Kibana. So I'm going to open same thing. This time I will say Kibana in Kibana. And it will basically says Kibana is running. So now while that is testing out, so let's do localhost. First do. So this is for this IP000 we use for Elasticsearch. So rather than writing that code line that I wrote to show the summary of the Elasticsearch, what is working or not, I could directly go to this IP address 0009200 by default for Elasticsearch. And that also shows you the same thing. So if your Elasticsearch is running, when you go to that address, you should see this. If you don't see this, your Elasticsearch is not running. So if you go to 000 port 9200, you should see the following page. Okay. Now, after I ran the Kibana, which is ran and there was no error. Now, if I go to this address, localhost 50, Kibana is by default is 5601 port. So if you go there, now you have this dashboard. Now, this is the Kibana Dashboard. Again, Elasticsearch allows you to distributed analysis over the data. Kibana gives you the dashboard for the work, right? So we will go through the dashboard, but now we want to talk about the other part of the work. Let's start with we have Logstash and then metric. So I will first start with Logstash. So think about it. You work on this project and you're writing a log to a specific folder. It doesn't need to be also in the same folder. You could actually have a storage unit, like somewhere that you store in the log file, right? But you want to connect your Logstash to read those log files. Okay. So what you need to do, based on the logs, so if you go to Logstash, if you have Logstash on your folders, if you go to config, there is a file, Logstash sample configuration. They put that for you, sample configuration. So you can replicate from that one. So what I want to do is that I want to create a replica of that file for different log files that I want to listen on or monitor. Okay, so for every log file that you want to monitor, you're going to basically create one of those log files, config files. You need to put that config files in the main folder of Logstash, not inside the config. So I left it in the main folder here, you see. So if this is Logstash folder, when you open it in this main folder, I put two Logstash, two log config files. One of them was for linear regression file, logistic regression file, and the other one was for that other simple log file that I created. So I have two log files that I want to monitor. I would create two config files. If I click on the simple one, this one, Logstash simple, okay. So let's see. So this is what the config file has this structure for you, the sample file. But it will ask you, what is the input to this Logstash? What is the input that you want to monitor? So you need to, as part of input, pass the file path to that log file that you want to monitor. So for me, this is the log file address. Okay. And the log file, remember, it was that text file that I have in my hard drive. If I scroll to the right, that's the log file. Okay. I would basically say that that's the input. Then it had a start position. Basically, it says that when I open this, from where I should start parsing. Okay, I would say that to do it from the beginning. Now, strategically, if you have a large file, maybe you don't want to start it from the beginning. Maybe you have some techniques that, for example, you need to say that it started from this timestamp or it started from some sort of updated way. I would just start it from the beginning. Every time you open this file, start from the beginning, go through the log for you. So that's the input. That's the input part of the file. The file part of the input. Now, the next thing is that you need to parse those logs. So Logstash by default doesn't know how to parse it. You need to also define the format of parsing that you want to do. For that, you need to use something called grok. Okay. So first, it comes inside this filter because you want to filter the message. So it says in order to filter, you need to use basically a function called grok. In grok, basically, you say that to match, it's kind of like a regex type of matching. For match, you are saying that to match message, this message is going to be anytime you find a timestamp that has the following format, pick the log level and pick the message. So now let's go back to the log file that I created. So if I go here to log file, date in that format, log type, log message. So I have three parts, right? And I'm going to parse those three. And in order to do so, again, let's go here. I will say, first is a timestamp. There is a space, then there is a basically log level, then there is a message. Parse those three basically out of that, out of each line in the log file that I have. Does that make sense? So you use grok for that and you say to match those. And then you can create columns, new variables, basically. Here for this example, I only create one new variable and I call it timestamp, basically. Okay, so you say that this is a match date matching. Oh, sorry, actually, I said wrong. This one is for matching. How do you want to match the parsing? I'm using timestamp as the index, the pivots, when you have one index column, there's going to be timestamp. So there's nothing else for this one. So you parse this using this, and you are saying that to output. Now, this is the part. Logstash just logs it for you, parses that. You still need to present it to Elasticsearch. So output, you're going to tell to Logstash to post this, to send this to Elasticsearch. Elasticsearch, again, is a distributed server that allows you to receive lots of data to analyze. It has an active port and link that's open. It was, for my machine, was localhost 9200, right? 0009200. So I will tell to Logstash that we want to output this to Elasticsearch. Okay. On Elasticsearch, it doesn't require a certificate. I put it force it to false. For some of you that had issues with certificate, maybe all we need to do is also force it to false. Don't need to verify it because it's just local. You don't do it using the company, just local, right? You pass the address to the host. I want to post the result to this IP address, and you create an index for it. It's really important that you remember this index concept. If you go in any company you work with Elasticsearch, everything is around index. They always tell you that, can you create an index for this? Can you create an index for that? That's what they mean. Index means that in order to present this data from Logstash into Elasticsearch, you need to have some index, some name, some like ID, right? You need to create that index. So I'll just create this index to be log455 or whatever. Okay, so that's going to be the index. So you will see this index in Kibana in order to access this data. Okay, and then who's the user? I will say, for example, that's the user. And if I want to give it a password, I give it, for example, a password. And you will say that this will stand out. Basically, it's like the code that you used for. Is this a codec? There's a codec behind it. You don't need to. But by default, is Ruby. Okay, so it's just some codec for parsing. Just you don't need to do that. So that's one simple example. Now let's do the same thing for linear regression, logistic regression, which is this one. Look at the format: timestamp, AUC, F1 score, false positive, and so on. I want to open this and read one at a time those ones and save them into a variable called AUC and stuff like that. I want to create those variables. So you go to Logstash, this one. So here. So first thing, it's basically the same input, file path, start position, beginning. You don't need this DB pass. You don't need that. But the first part is the same. You just pass the input, file pass to that file that you want to parse. Then you go back to the filter again. This time I want to filter more and I want to create features. So what I will do is that I use grok for every part that I want to parse out. So one time I will say that pick the timestamp, and I call it timestamp 1. So it shouldn't be AUC, it should be timestamp. So I will match it, then I overwrite it as this name. Now I have a variable called timestamp 1. Second time I pick AUC, and I create a variable called AUC. Then I go down. I basically you keep adding this. I pick F1 score, create a F1 score, FBR, FNR, data size, and then if there's a message, for example. That's all you need to do. So repeat this grok for what you want to parse out, and if you want to create them as a variable. And then you go down here. Again, at the end, you put the date because the message comes on a date, so you want to have this pivot to be indexed on the dates, date of creation of the message. And the last thing, again, where do you want to output it? Same thing. I want to output it to Elasticsearch, this IP, this is the index name that I give to it, this is the user, You don't need a certificate for it. Okay. So now we created, and again, same thing that is going to be Ruby. So now we created 2 log config files. Okay. Now the next thing is that so log config files doesn't mean that the Elasticsearch will monitor this. Logstash will monitor them actively. In order to monitor, you need to create something called a pipeline for monitoring. So you go to Logstash, and in the folders, you will see here. And you go into config, there are 2 main files: logstash.yml, similar to the other one, kibana.yml, elasticsearch.yml, but there's also pipeline.yml. So in logstash.yml, let's open this one. Everything by default, so I'm not changing anything. Okay. Now, if you go to pipeline.yml, I want to create pipelines. So all you need to do is that go to the bottom of this document and create a pipeline for whatever you want to monitor actively. So I add basically dash pipeline ID logistic regression. I give it a name. Logistic regression is the pipeline ID that I want. And pass configuration, you will pass the file path to that config that we just created, right? So remember this, we just created this config file here, logistic regression log_r.config. You will pass this one into that pipeline file here. That's it. You basically say that to the Logstash, you are actively going to monitor this. As time goes and this updates, I don't need to rerun it. There's an active pipeline to constantly monitor this logs, this config file, and that config file is connected to the log file. Does that make sense? So now we have this. So what we need to do is basically, I create this one. Let's just run it. So when you see a message like this, that means that it successfully parsed out the file. So it basically tells you that you see, these are the parsing that happened. Now, you have Logstash that's parsing and sending the data to Elasticsearch, because remember, we connected to the IP address. Now, if we go back here, now this is the main dashboard that we have. I'm not comfortable to teach this file like security observability. I haven't worked with it, to be honest. So this is an amount of teaching I can do on Elasticsearch and Kibana, but it should be enough for creating a dashboard. You click on the left side, and this is the views that you have. There is a part called analytics that gives you discover, dashboard, canvas, maps, machine learning, visualizer, right? And we will go over those. Then you have this observabilities, which, to be honest, I haven't worked with it, so I'm not going to talk about it. But I will go down here to management. So you go to management, and the last one, which is a stack management. Okay, so if you go over there, this is where you can create your pipelines, manage them properly, right? So in order to, so you have this data that comes to your Elasticsearch, but by default, you don't have a view over those data. So you need to create something called data view. So you need to go to management, and on Kibanas, you will see here data views. So you will click on the data views, and by default, you don't have this. This is empty, this page. What you need to do is to click here on create data view. When you click on that, on the right side, it will show you any active index or data stream that you have, that you can create a view on. So one of them was logistic regression. And then I have, well, so we have this one. This is the second file. We will talk about the metric we get later because we haven't shown it yet. But I have these ones also active. So we're going to start with logistic regression. All you need to do is copy the index name, paste it here in the index pattern. For example, I would say logistic regression. I want to monitor that. It will pick it up. Give you a green. Your index matches. You give it a name for that data view, and then you basically say that what you remember we create an index as timestamp. Basically, you decide what feature is you want to use as index. You might have multiple, not just timestamp. Here we only have timestamp, so timestamp is going to be the data view. Then you save data view to Kibana. As soon as you do that, because I already have it, I'm not going to repeat that. You have basically one of this one. I don't know which one. So now, in order to see this, you go left, you go to discover. Okay, so you go to discover. Now, when you go to discover, if I click on the left bar, you see all the data views that you created. So if you click on a data view, for example, January 31st, 2056. So let's make this smaller. So this is the data that we right now populating. It's being converted for you. Look at the timestamp. The latest data that came to this model, this dashboard, is tonight, as a couple of what time is it? It's like 4 minutes ago, right? And what does it say? It says this is the timestamp that was created. Who was the host created, basically, and it gives you some information around it. If there was some script. Now, we haven't populated proper message or not, but think about from your perspective. You have a pipeline that's running. You can quickly monitor the logs. You see all this log. You see basically some quick dashboards of the message patterns that are coming into your systems. And on the left now here, if I minimize it, it gives you all the available fields that you created. So we had timestamp, if you remember, AUC, data size, F1 score, F1 score. You see all those variables that we created. Now they are here. So you can basically use a variable and say, hey, visualize it for me. Right? So it quickly gives you dashboards. You can create dashboards over these features. Now, you all have done some sort of visualization. So this type of thing is you practice around and basically figure it out how to connect them to each other, right? But at the end, it's a toolkit that quickly allows you to parse enough amount of data and create some visual, basically, perspective on that data. Now, let's go. So this is the data and gives you suggestions on. For example, it says for this data, you could use the following types of visualizations also, right? Or I think you can basically create your own, like you can here. So let's talk about some of this. Like on here you have query menu, so you can basically add filters. You can write queries because even at the end, remember this is a database, right? So you can write queries to say that give me only the files that users access from this type of machines. And if the user age is between this group and this group, stuff like that. So you can write a simple SQL queries basically, or complicated, and create filter those. When you have filters, your filter basically will come here as a new filter, so you can reuse the filter. And that's the same thing. You can here change the, so if you want to query for the data on the right, you can change the time window. That how far you want to go back to look at the data, for example, and stuff like that. Now let's go to back here. So that was for file changes. And now if I change this to this one, this is the other lab. This is the other file. This one doesn't have F1 and swing stuff like that. It just calculates gathers some information. Right. So Any log file that you have, all you need to do, if your Kibana Elasticsearch is running, create a Logstash config file, go to the Logstash pipeline, connect those two together, and connect the config file to the log file. Doesn't matter where is the log file. Log file could be in a cloud base. And then you have it on a dashboard. And you can basically parse it out and make it more useful. Now, if you want to create dashboards, it has a page called dashboards. Okay, so you click on the dashboards. It has a default set of dashboard that you can use, like metric bits type of dashboards. And as you go forward, I feel like they're like for Oracle system, AWS, GCP, they're supporting almost everything. Let's see. Or we will work with one of those, but you can either do that, or you just simply can say, create my own dashboard. And when you want to create a dashboard, like for example, right now, this is empty. I created, say create, and I select the data view that I want to use for that dashboard. Okay, let's say this one. Now, you have all the fields. You have a page like a dashboard. Remember Tableau type of dashboards? You can do drop and drag, figure out which one goes with the other one. You can create access basically here. You can select the predefined types of lines, for example, to use. Like let's do one example. For example, you can say, I want to do this versus this. Didn't select. Let's see. And let's do this one. Okay. So let's just see. When we drop on the right X, you see the on the X-axis it says counts of records. So you could change that. So it's like again simple to like Tableaus or other like a Power BI or stuff like that. You can change it from count to frequency to average and stuff like that, right? Again, I leave all of this for you. But you do this and you create a dashboard. And lots of companies, this is a real thing. The product that we have, the dashboard, is Elasticsearch and Kibana. That means companies, we sell a product to the customer data comes to the Elastic. You have a database is connected to basically Elasticsearch. You parse it using Kibana, using Logstash or some other, or it could be anything else. By default, we do Logstash because they work together. You use Kibana, create the dashboard, and you put the password for these dashboards. It's not accessible by everyone. You give the access to this dashboard to the owner of the product, whoever who bought it from you. And every time they want to monitor the system, they're like, okay, let me see what you found today. They go to this website. This is like a dashboard for you. So you don't build any product, like any, what's called your own UI. You actually use this, create a UI, a dashboard for a user to work with. And this is a really common practice. So I definitely want you to use this in your project to get comfortable with it. And you will see that it's actually going to be really useful as when you go for job search. Lots of companies, they do ELK and you put it on your stack. Hey, I do ELK. This is my example of ELK that I have worked on. Okay. It's just the steps are easy. It's just the dashboard creation is going to be interactive. Now let's do the last thing. Talk about the metric bit. Okay. So I basically downloaded this metric bit. And all you need to do for a metric bit, it's basically follow the steps here. So if you go here, metric bit references, they have a perfect documentation, set up and run. It's like it's like a really straightforward how to set it up on your machine. If your ELK works, the metric is just quick. It's just a quick setup. You either download it or you install it basically. For me, again, I download it, and where's the metric bit here? So there's a metric bit.config file. And this is basically, also, I think this is a default. I really don't think I have changed anything. I just need to pass the Kibana IP address. So Kibana is sitting on this IP address and this port. You need to just specify that the pass to your Elasticsearch, and there's nothing else. But I didn't put in because again, this is a local, right? And oh, actually, I needed to do this. I do remember this. I needed to add this. By default, Nginx is kind of like important for APIs processing. So I needed to basically add this. I didn't have it. So you might have it, you might not need it, but if you didn't have this on your metric week, just the video is being recorded. Add this to the end of the metric. So now what we can do, if I'm not wrong, for metric week, we need to I don't remember the correct command line for it. Dash U? Yeah. E. Okay, yeah. All right. So dash E. No. Oh, I think I need to. Yeah, you need to run it in the same folder. You do metric week dash E. Now, what happens, metric week, its job is to monitor your system metrics. The performance around your product, right? It's like a CPU, memories, and stuff like that. And it also is connected to the Elastic, and we'll write the message over there. Now, if I go back here, as part of, I already created, but again, you needed to do the same thing. Go to stack management, start changes, go to data views, create a data view, and then metric bit. You need to select the metric bit, okay? Now, I already had that. I already have it here. So I go back to discover. I go back here to metric bit. And it's right now because I'm doing activity. Look, I have activities at the moment. So it collects lots of information around the machine. So what we want to do is that we want to go to dashboard and so let's save this. I don't want it. So I will create it, but I didn't want to do this because by default has a way that for metric B. Yeah, okay. Yeah. So by default has dashboard for metric B. You don't need to create it. So all you need to do is to search metric beat system. I think it's this one, system overview EC2, ECS. So you click on that. It quickly, like you don't need to create this for the user. You have it, like you monitor it. It mostly could be also only for yourself. It quickly gives me that, hey, you have one host, because there's one machine is using on this server. The CPU usage, 17%. Memory usage, disk usage, inbound traffic, outbound traffic, CPU real time, post basically memory real time. And gives you, there are so many other fields that you can use to create more insight on your data. But think about how quickly you can monitor all the machines that you deployed, aggregated of CPU memory usage, and if you knew something is red, you know something is wrong. You need to go quickly update it. Right? Or you can basically, you have the metric information, you can create your own dashboard. Okay. Any questions? Yes. So PySpark, what would you use PySpark for? What? That's correct. But so no. When I say what are you using it for? I mean like. So just think the problem this way. So I'm running this Elasticsearch on one machine. Now imagine you have in your company 10 people are using your dashboard, right? This is your dashboard, basically. And you have all the CPUs and memories that are being used. So that's what you want to monitor, to understand that how much impact you have. No, it's not. This is nothing about your data. It's about the traffic inbound, CPU memory footprint on your machine. It's not about the data pipeline that you have. You mean the footprint? Which footprint? The CPU or memory? So the CPU is the machine itself. So this machine right now is running, for example, it says 70% CPU is active, right? For example, or there's a memory usage, like for example, 84%. And those investments are happening in different cities. So how much that investment is actually taking the. So that's a good point. So think about this way. So we deploy an application to different customers. Every one of them. You run my app on your machine. What I do, I collect metric bit on your machine because I want to collect information to see how much my app is utilizing your server, your machines. I send all those metric bits to the cloud. Now I aggregate those CPU utilization across all the machines. And I find that when you run my app, on average, 40% of the time, CPU is active. So normally you have a threshold. You're like, I don't want to keep CPU utilization footprint more than 20%. You know, there's some boundaries that you don't want to pass. And then if you're passing it, then you need to know, you need to do some changes and stuff like that. Yeah. And how do you that? And how do you that on the that's a great point. So you collect those data separately as parts of your system design. So you know, and any Windows machine, for example, or any like that. For example, you have the log, and it tells you basically how much each of these is using CPU. So what you need to do is that as part of your application, you need to listen to this, monitor for your own app, and see that how much it basically uses the data. So that's what I was showing you. So yeah, so when you show here, when you look, for example, if let's say I'm looking for Elastic, I want to see how much Elastic is using memory now or CPU. There is a name here, right? Here, for example, Zoom. So I look at Zoom and I say that this is the CPU at this timestamp. This is the CPU in the next timestamp. You monitor this. So this yeah, most likely like Mac, Ubuntu, Windows, they all have this pre-built. All you need to do is that to connect your application to extract this information. You don't need to monitor it yourself. It's already there for you. Right. So you basically send this up. All right. Okay, class. Yeah.